just next to floor. Yeah.
Well, it hasn't been as hard as I thought it initially would be. If we were to compare to the conversations we have about climate change, say about 10 years ago, we would have a lot of explanation to do. But I think the awareness of our society is actually quite high now. Now it's not a matter of whether we need to persuade people about the effects of climate change. The questions are now being directed at us as to how fast we can implement our climate change agenda. We know all the basics: reducing the waste of plastic waste, trying to transition away from fossil fuels. I think all the hard conversations have already been done. The convincing has already been done. Now it's a question of implementation.
True.
What is this carbon trading? What is this about? When you say the word carbon, it is a language of the industries. But for the consumers, what is carbon trading?
Right. So actually, the term carbon is not so foreign to us. I am aware that even in schools, they talk about carbon dioxide. We emit carbon, and that's what causes greenhouse gases, which then contribute to global warming. I think the question now is, what about our carbon credits? And also, will there be a carbon tax? That is the more appropriate question, especially for the industries. So, okay, when we look at carbon trading, we need to look at both the carbon tax and also the carbon credit. That's where the trading is. Carbon tax is where we collect revenue, or we penalize those that are polluting our environment, and the carbon credit is where it's used to offset that. So that's where the trading is: positive, negative, positive, negative. That's why we have to set up a whole trading market for this, and that's where all our policies come into place. We recently launched the National Carbon Market Policy, the NCMP. This is actually in line with what I mentioned, the Dasar Perubahan Iklim, where we have to put the framework in place. So the carbon policy is now there. Under the policy, we need to first say what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a framework where we first recognize our carbon credits. We have a carbon sink, and how do we price that? Once we price it, how do we then start to trade it so that our industries can use that to offset their carbon, and if they pollute more than the threshold, then they'll pay the tax. That's where Rupin comes in. The next step is then Rupin. We have the framework. Next, we need the legal teeth, so to say, the legal enforcement power, and that's where Rupin is. Rupin I hope that we'll be able to bring that to Parliament by the middle of this year, which is the next session. It's currently at the AGC chambers, and we are working in order to refine all the finer points. But assuming our term of parliamentary term is at its latest.